There's a strange peace that comes when you stop fighting the current. You felt it before, in a quiet moment, maybe when you gave up forcing something that just wouldn't move, the relationship that didn't respond no matter how much you tried, the opportunity that kept slipping through your hands. The moment you stopped pushing, something shifted. But not everyone recognizes this moment for what it is. For most of us, we've been trained to grip tighter, to grind harder, to hustle our way into control. We're taught that peace comes after achievement, that clarity follows success, and that rest is something you earn only after you've conquered the chaos. But what if we've had it backwards all along? What if clarity comes not after the struggle, but when we stop struggling? There's a quiet power in surrender. Not the kind of surrender that gives up, the kind that lets go, that stops clenching its fists and finally opens its hands. This is not about giving in, it's about getting out of your own way. There's an old metaphor, one that speaks louder than most words can. Picture a man in a river, caught in the current. The more he thrashes, the more the water swallows him. But the moment he lets his body relax and goes with the flow, he floats. He's not being weak. He's aligning with something greater than himself. Most people are like the drowning man. They don't realize that all their effort, all their planning, all their resistance is what's dragging them down. And so we chase. We chase outcomes, control, closure, certainty. We live in fear that if we stop trying, everything will fall apart. But here's the paradox. Life only falls into place when you stop trying to force it. When we stop clinging to how things should be, we finally begin to see them as they are. And often, they are already enough. This journey, this reflection is about something deeply human. It's about the moments when we are invited, quietly, to surrender. Not because we're weak, but because we're wise. Because sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is to stop. And in that stillness, in that pause, life meets you where you are. Let's begin. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from the body. It comes from the soul. You know it when you feel it. That heavy, invisible weight you carry when life feels like a constant negotiation. When every day feels like a battle to make things go your way. You're not just tired, you're drained. Not because you've done too much, but because you've tried too hard to hold it all together. It's subtle at first. You wake up each morning with a silent tension in your chest. You plan, you push, you check off boxes. You try to control your time, your relationships, your path. You believe that with just a little more effort, a bit more discipline, everything will finally click, but it doesn't. And quietly, frustration seeps in. Disappointment follows. You wonder why life isn't responding, why you're doing everything right, yet peace keeps escaping you. This is what happens when we try to force life. Like a clenched fist that can't receive anything new, we tighten our grip on how we think things should be, and in doing so, we block what's trying to come in. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught us not to attach ourselves to outcomes, not to build our identity on things outside our control. Some things are up to us, Epictetus said, and some things are not. Yet we spend most of our energy trying to bend the world into our expectations. We think we're being strong, but in truth, we're resisting the very flow that could carry us forward. There's a moment in every life, often small, often quiet, when we glimpse a different way. Maybe it's a plan that falls apart and leaves you relieved instead of disappointed, or a job you didn't get that opens a better door, or the relationship that ended, which felt like a failure, until you breathed again. In that breath, in that letting go, there is truth. Because when we stop forcing, we start seeing. We begin to notice the soft pull of life itself, how it's been trying to guide us all along. But our noise, our desperation, our need to control, it drowns out the whisper. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care enough to allow life to be what it is, to allow yourself to move with it, not against it. You begin to realize not everything has to be wrestled into place. Some things find you when you become still enough to notice them, like the traveler in the desert, lost in pursuit of a mirage, who only discovers the oasis when he stops running. Stillness is not the absence of effort, it's the alignment with what truly matters. And when you find that alignment, something shifts. You stop striving, you start flowing, and life, almost quietly, begins to respond. There's a quiet rebellion in slowing down. In a world obsessed with speed, with goals, upgrades, and endless ambition, choosing stillness feels unnatural, even lazy. But stillness, true stillness, is not stagnation. It's presence. It's listening to life instead of shouting over it. Think of a tree. It does not chase the wind. It stands rooted, open, and alive. It doesn't panic in the storm. It bends. It doesn't rush spring. It waits. And in its waiting, it grows deeper, stronger, more unshakable. But we're different. We've been conditioned to believe that the more we do, the more we are. That our value comes from motion, from achievement, from the noise we generate. We live in a constant loop of reaching, not because we're full of purpose, but because we're afraid of what silence might reveal. What would happen if you stopped? If you allowed a little space between what's next and what's now? Most of us are terrified of that space. Because in that space, we might feel the things we've been outrunning, the uncertainty, the grief, the fear of not being enough. But here's what the Stoics knew. Stillness doesn't just reveal what's broken, it also reveals what's true. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." But to enter that space, we must stop filling every crack with distraction. We must be willing to just be. Sit for a moment with that idea, to just be. No performing, no proving, no pleasing, just presence. There's a strength in that state, a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't shout but steadies. It roots you like the tree. It centers you in something the world can't shake. Not success, not failure, not praise, not rejection. And from that place, action becomes different. You stop reacting, you start responding. You move not from pressure, but from clarity. This is the paradox. Stillness gives birth to the right movement. When you're still inside, you hear what matters. You recognize what feels forced and what flows naturally. You stop chasing approval and start living in alignment. The world might not understand this shift. It might still try to rush you, to pull you back into the noise. But once you've tasted the peace of inner presence, the chase no longer seduces you. Because you'll know the truth, that life moves best when you're not pushing. You don't have to run faster to reach what's meant for you. You just have to be still enough to receive it. And that stillness, it's not something you earn, it's something you allow. There's a certain illusion we all fall for, the illusion of control. We build plans, shape timelines, set expectations. We try to predict the next turn, manage every variable, control how others see us, how outcomes unfold, how life behaves. But life doesn't follow scripts, and the more we try to grip it tightly, the more it slips through our fingers. You've probably experienced it, that sinking feeling when something doesn't go the way you planned. The job that didn't call back, the perfect scenario that unraveled, the person you thought would stay who suddenly walked away. And in the middle of it all, you tried to hold on tighter, as if by sheer will, you could fix what was never yours to control. But control is a mirage, and the more we chase it, the further it retreats. The Stoics saw this clearly. Make the best use of what is in your power, said Epictetus, and take the rest as it happens. But we reverse it. We obsess over what's not in our power. We fixate on outcomes, on others' opinions, on timing, on external rewards. And in doing so, we exhaust ourselves trying to force doors that were never meant to open. This doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we start discerning. What's mine to carry and what's not? Most suffering isn't caused by what happens to us. It's caused by our resistance to what happens. We say, this shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have left. I should be further along by now. That word should, it creates a war inside us, a fight against reality itself, and reality always wins. But there's another way. Let go of the should. Let go of the timeline. Let go of the belief that your worth depends on the outcome. Start where you are, with what you can do, with how you choose to respond. There is immense power in shifting your attention inward, from forcing life to flowing with it, From trying to control the wind to learning how to adjust your sails, you become less rigid, more resilient. You move from fear to flexibility. And ironically, it is in this release, in this surrender, that your true power emerges. Not the power to make everything go your way, but the power to be at peace, even when it doesn't. Because once you stop trying to bend life into your idea of how it should be, you begin to receive life as it is. And often, it's more generous than you imagined. Life doesn't ask you to be in control, it asks you to be in alignment. And alignment begins when you stop forcing. Most people think surrender means weakness, that it's giving up, that it's failure. But that's only because they've never truly experienced it. Real surrender isn't about quitting, it's about trust. It's about releasing the illusion that you are the sole architect of every moment and allowing yourself to be part of something larger, something wiser than your plans. Imagine trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips away. But when you open your palm gently, freely, the water rests there, unbothered, unforced. That's the difference between control and surrender. The Stoics taught this not just as a mindset, but as a way of being. They knew that clinging to what you cannot control only breeds anxiety. They spoke of apatheia, not apathy, but a deep emotional equilibrium, a steadiness in the face of the uncontrollable. And how do we reach that steadiness? By releasing the outcome, by showing up fully, with integrity, with effort, but detaching from what happens next. This isn't easy, especially in a world that rewards hustle, where surrender is seen as laziness. But what most people don't see is the hidden cost of constant striving, the quiet burnout, the chronic stress, the dull ache of always needing things to be different. You've likely been there, working so hard for something only to feel empty when you get it, or pushing endlessly toward a version of success that never really felt like yours. That's what forcing life looks like, achieving without fulfillment, moving without meaning. But when you surrender, not as resignation but as wisdom, the entire texture of life begins to change. You start to notice moments you used to rush past. You listen more. You breathe deeper. You allow space for joy to enter, uninvited. And here's the quiet miracle. What is truly meant for you starts arriving without struggle. You begin to attract people, opportunities, and clarity, not through force, but through presence, through alignment, through ease. It's not that life suddenly becomes effortless. It's that your resistance fades. You're no longer fighting the current. You're learning to float, to trust that where it's taking you is where you need to be. That doesn't mean you abandon ambition. It means your ambition is no longer rooted in fear. It becomes guided by truth, not by proving something, but by expressing something. Not chasing, but flowing. This is surrender. Not a retreat from life, but a deeper embrace of it. Not weakness, but strength in its quietest, most grounded form. Emptiness scares people. They think of it as loss, as failure, as something missing. But in truth, emptiness is often the beginning of everything meaningful. It's in the empty moments, the ones between relationships, between jobs, between plans, that clarity has space to speak. It's in the quiet, when the noise dies down, that your inner voice becomes audible. The Stoics understood this. So did the mystics, the sages, the poets. Lao Tzu wrote, "To be full, let yourself be empty." And though the words are ancient, their truth is timeless. Because real fullness doesn't come from accumulation. It comes from space, from releasing what no longer fits, no longer serves, no longer feels like you. But that release, it's hard. We cling to the known. We fill every gap with distraction. We treat stillness like a void that must be avoided. But the void is not a nothing. It's a possibility. It's the place where new things take root. Think of a field. If it's overgrown, nothing new can grow. The weeds choke out the seeds. But if you clear the land, if you let it lie open untouched, the soil renews. It becomes fertile again, ready for something better. Your soul works the same way. When you empty it of what's been draining you, old narratives, toxic attachments, rigid expectations, it becomes light again, spacious, ready. And into that space, life can enter, real life. Not the kind built on performance and pressure, but the kind that feels like truth. You begin to feel joy without needing a reason. You breathe easier, you laugh more, you connect more deeply. Not because you've acquired something new, but because you finally made room for what was always waiting. This is why emptiness matters. It teaches you that you were never lacking. You were simply crowded. You were full of noise, of striving, of the weight of should. And in shedding all of that, you come home. Not to some new version of yourself, but to the self that's been buried beneath it all. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature. Being aligned, not with trends or pressure or fear, but with your own essence. And your essence doesn't need more. It needs space. So stop running from the empty moments. Stop rushing to fill the silence. Instead, step into them. Let them stretch. Let them breathe. Because in the quiet, life starts to speak. In the emptiness, life begins to rise. Not as noise, not as chaos, but as a gentle whisper that says, this stillness, this space is where everything begins. There comes a moment, often after exhaustion, after disappointment, after silence, when something shifts inside you. You stop asking, what more can I do? And start wondering, what if I stop doing so much? And in that question, a new door opens. One that doesn't lead to striving, but to flow. To what the Stoics and the Taoists and the mystics all knew but rarely said directly, that life is not a problem to solve, it's a rhythm to move with. This is the essence of effortless action, not inaction, not passivity, but motion without friction. Choices made not from fear, but from alignment. Words spoken not to impress, but to connect. A pace that's no longer dictated by the panic of being left behind. The Tao calls it Wu Wei, doing without doing. A way of living where your actions feel like extensions of who you are, not performances of who you think you need to be. We all know what it feels like to force, to overthink, to push so hard we begin to break. But remember a time when things flowed, when you moved with ease, when the right people showed up, when you made decisions from a calm knowing rather than a frantic doubt. That wasn't luck, that was alignment. And alignment isn't something you find out there, it's something you return to when you get quiet enough inside. The Stoics didn't say go with the flow as a slogan. They lived it. They practiced it, not because it was easy, but because it was real. They knew that when you resist life, you suffer. But when you accept it, when you partner with it, even hardship becomes meaningful. Imagine being the river, not the dam. Imagine allowing things to come and go without grasping or running. Imagine trusting that what is meant for you cannot be missed, and what is not will fall away with or without your permission. This is not fatalism, it's faith. Not in magic, but in rhythm. In reality, in yourself. It means waking up and choosing to listen before speaking, to feel before reacting, to observe before deciding. And from that place, you act. Not out of pressure, but out of peace. And in that peace, things move. The right people arrive, the right ideas emerge, the right timing unfolds. You stop living in resistance, and you start becoming the kind of person life naturally flows through. You no longer chase, you no longer force, you align, and life responds. At the end of it all, something inside you softens. Not because you figured everything out, not because life has finally bent to your will, but because you've stopped needing it to. You've stopped the chase, the constant fight to shape, to fix, to perfect. And in its place, you've begun to listen, to let life speak on its own terms, to meet the present moment not as an obstacle, but as a guide. This is where the real shift happens, not out there, but in you. Because when you stop trying to force life, life begins to flow through you, not always in the way you imagined, but often in ways more beautiful than you thought possible. The Stoics didn't promise comfort. They didn't teach detachment as a way to escape feeling. They taught us how to remain rooted, how to remain whole, no matter what changes around us. They knew that true strength is not found in domination, but in discipline, in grace, in letting go. So ask yourself now, what are you still clinging to? What belief, what timeline, what version of success or love or identity are you gripping so tightly that you've left no room for life to surprise you? Let it go, not because you're giving up, but because you're making space. Let go of the need to rush, the need to explain, the need to control every detail. Allow stillness, allow space, allow trust. Because when you release your grip, your hands are finally free to receive. And in that openness, everything begins to arrive. Not forced, not manufactured, but flowing. Let this sink in. You don't need to chase what's meant for you. You don't need to strive to earn your worth. You don't need to fear the quiet. You are already enough. And when you live from that place, from presence, from alignment, from peace, life begins to meet you with a gentleness you didn't know was possible. No more running, no more forcing, just trust, just flow. This, right here, right now, is where your life begins to change.